Nearly 4,000 people have been evacuated in southwest Iceland after a volcano erupted following weeks of intense earthquake activity.
UN votes on key humanitarian issues in Gaza amid unrelenting Israeli bombardment. From binge to mindful drinking, WHO reports heavy drinking among young people has plummeted in the last 20 years.
BP says it'll stop transporting oil and gas through the Red Sea as Yemen's Houthi rebels continue to attack shipping there.
A volcano erupted in southwest Iceland on Monday after weeks of intense earthquake activity. On Tuesday, its power appeared to be declining, according to the Icelandic Meteorological Institute. An evacuation of nearly 4,000 people out of the fishing town of Grindavik had already taken place over recent days. There have been several eruptions in unpopulated areas in the peninsula over the last 4 years and points to a tectonic instability in the region.
Wounded Palestinians are rushed to Nasser Hospital in Khan Yunis, following an Israeli bombardment in southern Gaza. But shelling isn't the only weapon of war. Human Rights Watch has accused Israel of intentionally starving civilians as part of its offensive in the Palestinian enclave. Israel says it's not striking civilians intentionally. However, this footage from the 10th of December shows paramedics narrowly escaping shelling while recovering bodies in Khan Yunis. US Defense Chief Lloyd Austin is in Tel Aviv to confirm support for Israel. He has spoken about making the war in Gaza, quote-unquote, more surgical and to move to lower intensity operations.
Protecting Palestinian civilians in Gaza is both a moral duty and a strategic imperative. So we will continue to stand up for Israel's bedrock right to defend itself. And we will also continue to urge the protection of civilians during conflict and to increase the flow of humanitarian aid into Gaza.
A humanitarian aid convoy entered Gaza through the Kerem Shalom crossing on Monday. The passage is situated on the border of Egypt, Israel and Gaza and is much faster than the Rafah passenger crossing. Meanwhile, Hamas has released a video of 3 elderly Israeli men being held hostage in Gaza. The IDF has condemned the footage as quote-unquote atrocious terror. A UN Secretary vote calling for an end to the fighting in Gaza was postponed on Monday due to arguments over wording. Christmas is a time for celebrations, with family, friends and work colleagues all getting together. Alcohol consumption skyrockets during the holidays, but more and more young people are switching from binge drinking to mindful drinking, a way of being more aware of what and how much you consume. It's a bit embarrassing. It's a bit cringy to see yourself in these situations, like being extremely drunk. You can be recorded and then it goes viral, so it's better to be more aware of where you are, who you're with and what you're doing. According to the World Health Organization, heavy episodic drinking among Europeans under 25 has fallen more than 10 points since the year 2000. Young people are taking greater care of their physical and mental health and also their personal image. I prioritize other things in my life, like making a plan in the morning, which if I was hungover, I probably wouldn't do. In Spain, 15% of those under the age of 24 do not drink, but they still face social pressure. My excuse is always, I don't drink for health reasons, so then no one bothers me.
Mindful drinking es un fenómeno global que inunda de hashtags las redes sociales. Beber con moderación se ha convertido para muchos jóvenes en un reto viral.
Their relationship with social media has to do with the positive feedback they receive, the likes they get, and this feedback of I haven't been drinking or I've managed to reduce my alcohol consumption is important to them because they receive recognition in form of a reward from their followers or from the people with whom they share networks. The rise of cocktail bars like this shows a change in consumption trends towards higher quality and lower quantity, where you can enjoy a conventional cocktail and alternate if you want with a mocktail from its extensive menu of non-alcoholic options.
Energy giant BP says it'll stop transporting oil and gas through the Red Sea as attacks on commercial vessels by Yemen's Houthi rebels continue. They've targeted Israeli-linked vessels during the war in Gaza and have escalated their attacks in the last few days. Brigadier General Yahya Sarri, the Houthi military spokesman, said on Monday they launched what he described as naval aircraft at the Swan Atlantic, a chemical and oil products carrier, and the MSC Clara cargo ship. Some of the world's top shipping companies and oil giants have now been scared off, meaning that a key route that 10% of global trade passes through is now almost completely out of use. Ships will now have to go around the Cape of Good Hope at the bottom of Africa instead, adding around 10 days or longer to their journeys. And that means the price of food and many other goods will inevitably rise.
According to the US Treasury, sanctions against Russia are working. Their new data shows the ruble is weaker and locals are leaving the country. But with sanctions scepticism growing on both sides of the pond, Euronews asked the US Deputy Secretary of the Treasury what proof he had.
Russia's economy is smaller. Russia has fewer people today, and their economy is less flexible. What Russia is today is a wartime economy. They're trying to produce as many weapons as possible, but they're no longer producing things that are going to strengthen their economy over time, and they're spending out the reserves that they've built over years to buy things like, to try and build tanks, but also to buy tankers, while our economies have, we have to admit, suffered because of Russia's war on Ukraine. Our economies have been far stronger than Russia's, and because of our alliance, we have the ability to invest in the future to make sure that our people have opportunities that, frankly, most Russians will never have because of Vladimir Putin's actions.
But a major roadblock for the West, making sure sanctions are actually effective. Does the Treasury have any suggestions to overcome loopholes and sanction circumvention?
Circumvention is a challenge, and it's one of the ways we know that our sanctions are working is that the Kremlin has ordered their intelligence services to design ways to try and get around them. But what we've done, working very closely with the European Union, is design an avenue of going after that circumvention using our sanctions and export controls. But we've also went out on joint missions between the United States, the EU, and UK, and went to countries where we're seeing circumvention. We're making very clear to them they have a choice. They can either continue to do business with Russia, a small and getting smaller economy in the global sense, or they can do business with us.
Another big challenge, getting the green light for more funding for Ukraine. At a summit last week in Brussels, the Hungarian government blocked a $50 billion aid package. Similarly, in the US, cash for Ukraine remains in limbo.
Just like in our country, it takes time to work through these packages. The same is true in Europe. You have to have debates, but ultimately we are aligned from a values perspective, and we're committed to continue to support the European people as they help us defend Ukraine and provide Ukraine with the resources they need. And that's what I expect to happen.
As politicians debate, the war drags on in Ukraine with major casualties on both sides. The World Bank says the country will need over €400 billion to reconstruct. Maeve McMahon, Euronews, Brussels.
Serbian President Vucic's Progressive Party celebrated its victory in the parliamentary election. The beaten Liberal pro-EU cartel denounced the intimidation of the media and civil rights activists, and opponents of the president took to the street claiming the vote was rigged. International election observers weren't able to confirm a systematic electoral rigging by the government, but they seem to agree with the complaints of the opposition.
Any efforts to tilt the playing field is a cause for concern and could potentially impact the outcome. And I think we have been very clear in our report about that there was not really a playing field.
They also confirmed other pre-electoral manipulations denounced by the opposition last night.
They say they have witnessed irregularities such as stuffing of ballot boxes, great crowds, group voting, and also problems with the secrecy of voting. What they also mention is the massive coming of people from outside of Belgrade to vote in Belgrade, people who are not from Belgrade or from Serbia as well.
The final report of the OSCE will be published in 2 months. Yet the alleged frauds could only have been decisive in the municipal election of Belgrade. The rest of Serbia voted for the ruling party. The opposition claims that their defeat is due to the omnipresence of President Vučić in the Serbian media and intimidation against civil servants.
The European Union is investigating the social media platform X over possible breaches of social media law. It's the first time that the European Commission launches an infringement procedure under its Digital Services Act. The legislation was approved to create a safer digital space where the fundamental rights of users are protected and to establish a level playing field for businesses.
The opening of proceedings means that the Commission will now investigate X's systems and policies related to certain suspected infringements. It does not prejudge the outcome of the investigation.
The decision was announced on the social media platform itself by Thierry Breton, the Commissioner in charge of the EU's internal market. The investigation will look into whether X, formerly known as Twitter, failed to do enough to curb the spread of illegal content, and also whether measures to combat information manipulation were effective. The EU will also examine whether X was transparent enough on the matter. The European Commission has already called out Elon Musk, X's owner, to do more towards eliminating hate speech, misinformation and violent terrorist content related to the war between Israel and Hamas.